Hey, how's it going everyone? Welcome to another project. Today's project we're going to create a on-off switch. Pretty simple on-off switch using HTML, CSS and JavaScript. You may have already seen it on my video shorts. So let me just show you the project and then we're going to quickly jump into our project overview. Okay, so here's the project. Pretty simple. Let me just hit the refresh. Pretty simple on and off switch. When it's in its standby state, it's going to have this blue neon effect. If we switch it on, then the neon effect is going to disappear and the green button is going to, and the on button is going to turn green. If we switch it off, the off button is going to turn red. If we switch it on again, the on button is going to turn green. If we switch it off and wait 5 seconds, we can obviously change that later on, then it's going to turn off the off button and go into just standby mode. So I think this is a pretty cool project. It's also going to be a pretty quick project. We're just going to use vanilla JavaScript, HTML and CSS, so no frameworks, nothing whatsoever. So yeah, with this being said, let's go over the project steps. So we're going to do a basic setup first of all. We're going to create our HTML, CSS and JavaScript files. Then we're going to create a boilerplate. We're going to link up our JavaScript and CSS files to the boilerplate. Then we're going to create the switch buttons themselves using HTML and CSS. We're also going to style them. We're going to use a couple of linear gradients here in order to achieve this gray effect. Okay. Also, let's see, then we're going to get our elements from the DOM using JavaScript and using getElementById or querySelector. We can also use just querySelector. Then we're going to add event listeners to them. Then we're going to create our addRemove utilities because we're going to add and remove classes here. Then we're going to remove that standby effect, which let me just hit the refresh. This is the standby effect. We're going to remove it if we switch on the button, and we're going to add it later on using a createTimeout function in order to add the standby effect back to, switch back to our cam, in order to add the standby effect back to our switch container. Okay, so I think this is a pretty cool project. If you do like it, please hit that thumbs up button in order to help that YouTube algorithm as always. Okay, also if you're new to the channel, want to subscribe, hit the subscribe button, click that notification bell in order to get notified whenever I post new projects like this. Okay, so with this being said, let's jump into the project. So I just created here bare bone folder. Let's create our HTML and CSS file. So index.html. Let's create a boilerplate. Let's quickly link up our CSS. Go up here, link style.css file and our main.js file. You can call it app, you can call it switch, whatever. Let's call it main.js. So script and main.js. Also, let's create them. Style.css and main.js. All right, let's open this one up. It's going to open up using live server, of course. It's going to open up another document. I'm going to just drag and drop it here. I'm going to close up using Control B, my command palette. Okay, so now let's carry on and create our buttons. First, we're going to create an H1 for title on off switch. After that, I'm going to have a general div with the class of switch container dash container and also another class of standby. Within this container class, we're going to have our two buttons. So I'm just going to create one button tag. Then I'm going to give this a ID of on. And of course, hit enter, type in on, copy and paste it, and replace it with off. Okay, so that's basically it for our HTML. Pretty simple. I'm also going to, should I close it up? No, I still need it. IDs are okay. Okay, let's move on to our CSS file. First things first, I'm going to import a file from Google Fonts. So let's go to Google Fonts. And from here, I'm going to select pop-ins. So let's just search for pop-ins. There we go. I'm just going to select the thin font, copy it in, paste it in here, copy in the font family. Boom. Now again, the entire code is down in the description below, as always, so just free to go to the site, grab onto the code, copy it, and follow along or code along, as always, as you wish. Okay, so let's grab onto the body. Let's assign it this Poppins font, and now let's do a general reset. Let's actually go here. Let's do a general reset and take out all the margins and margin 0 and padding 0. And also let's set everything to box size, border box. Boom. Now we're done with this part. Let's also change our H1. Let's push it to the center. So let's go on to the H1, say text align center. And also let's give it a margin from the top and bottom of 5 rem and left and right auto. 5 rem and left and right auto. And that's it. Now for a switch container. So this class right here. Let's grab onto a switch container class. Target it in our CSS. Let's position it relative. Then we're going to display it as flex. Next up, we're going to edit a width of 260 pixels and a height of 100 pixels. Okay, I'm going to set the margins to auto. I'm going to push to the center. And then I'm going to set the border radius of the container itself to, let's say, 50 pixels. No, 5500, 50 pixels. Okay, let's set the background now to a hexadecimal. I'm going to select a very dark color, so a hash of 0E0E0E, and that's it. Now we can add a bit of a border, so let's go with the border of 1 pixel solid, and I'm going to use a 222, again a dark color. Okay, now I'm going to set a box shadow to it of 0 pixel, 0 pixel, 5 pixel for a spread, and 1 pixel, and then the color would be free. Nice. Oh yeah, I forgot to give the body a dark background color. So background color of hash, let's say 2B, actually 2B, to be or not to be, and to be and not to be. There we go. Okay, so we have a dark color. Hey, I should change the text not to white. Color and text FFF. There we go. Okay, we're done with our container. Now let's grab onto the standby class. And let's say that the class of standby is going to have a border of 1 pixel solid, and I'm going to give it a blue color, blue neon color. So it's going to be a hexadecimal color of 2196 F3, and that's basically it. Okay, now let's give it a bit of a glow, and for this I'm going to use a box shadow again. So box shadow 006 pixels and 1 pixel, 1 pixel, and again exactly the same color. So I'm just going to copy this hexadecimal color and paste it in here. All right. Now let's take care of the buttons. So I'm going to select the 2 button tags. I'm going to assign it a cursor of pointer. So whenever we're over our buttons, going to have a pointer effect, indicating that we are hovering over the buttons. Then I'm going to give it a transition of 0.3 seconds to each and every effect we're going to have on it. Let's increase the font size to 1.1 rem, and let's give them a width of 100%. So each of them will have a width of 100%. Now they're outside of their container, but we're going to take care of this shortly. But first of all, rounding down the borders, so we're going to use border radius again of 50 pixels. Okay, that's looking good. Now I'm going to give them a margin of 0.8 rem, and this is going to shrink them down a bit. Now let's change their background color. I'm going to change the background actually. I'm going to add a hexadecimal color of 115, 1515, and 15. And let's change the color of the text to a gray color. So let's type in color and gray. And there we go. Okay, so we have our two buttons. They're already having that click effect on them. Now all we need to do when we're switching states, so in order to have that on and off effect, you can see they have a linear gradient in it. We're going to use a linear gradient for that. So I'm going to select each button on itself. I'm going to select the ID of off. And when this ID contains, did I use capital letters? Yes, I did. So the ID of off, when it has the class of active, then its background is going to have a linear gradient of, let's first of all rotate it with 90 degrees. Then we're going to use a hexadecimal color of 4F, 4F, 4F. And this is going to only spread 30%. The next one is going to be hash of 2E, 2E, 2E. This is going to spread 66%. And the next one is going to have a hash color of 151515. And this one is going to be 100%. Okay. Okay, the text color of the off button is going to be red. I'm just going to type into red, and now I'm going to copy the entire thing. Whoa. I'm going to copy the entire thing and just change it to on. When the on ID has the class of active, then we're going to have the same color, the same linear gradient, but I'm going to change this to hexadecimal color of 4C8137. I love dictating hexadecimal colors. Okay, so let's just test it out. I'm going to give the off the class of active, and it's going to be red. It's going to have that color gradient. And if I take out active from off and give it to the on button, it's going to have a green color, and it's going to have that linear gradient. Okay, so I can take out both of these active classes. And now we can move on to JavaScript, and we can grab onto the elements from our DOM. So we're going to need 3 elements. We're going to need the off button, the on button, and the container itself. Okay, so I'm going to create here a variable const of btn. We're going to assign it to document. Let's just get elements by ID. You can also use querySelector, as you know. getElementById. We're going to grab onto the off button. We're going to do the same thing for our on button. So we're going to create a const, another variable using const on btn. To go to the document, getElementById. We're going to grab onto the ID of on. Okay, so we have both our buttons. The last thing that we need is the container. For this, I'm going to create another variable with the const. And I'm going to call this switch. Whoa, not the switch container. And we're going to go to the document, and because it's a class, I'm going to use querySelector on it. I'm going to select using the dot, because we can select a class, the container of switch dash container. Okay. Let's also have a console opened up. So inspect, and let's go to console here. We don't need you. So I'm going to drag this one up here. Whoa. Console, not source. And let's type in here a clear. Okay, so let's just console log our elements. Let's see, button is there and on button is also there, and the switch container is also there. So we have everything that we need. Okay. Now let's grab onto the on button and let's add event listeners to each of our buttons. So to our on button and our off button. So going to grab onto the on button. I'm not going to use add event listener so far and so on. If you want to, you can use it. I'm going to use on click event. So on click, then we're going to assign it to a arrow function. And now we can target our off button and we can change its class list using the remove operator to active if that active exists. Because when we're clicking our on button and the off button is active, we don't want that. We want it to be removed, and we're going to do the same thing from the on button. We just copy this and we're going to add the class of active. Okay, so we can click on it and the class of active is added to the on button. Now we need to remove it from, let's copy this, let's do it from the start. Let's grab onto our off btn, on click, we're going to assign to anonymous arrow function. This is going to call upon our, and now we can call upon our on button on btn, and we can call upon this class list, and we're going to remove the active class if it exists, and we're going to add to the off button using class list add the active button, active class. Okay, pretty simple. But I hate doing this. I normally use a function. Okay, so let's create a utility function. So here to do utility function of add remove or remove add. Okay, I'm going to call this function. So let's use the function keyword add remove active. This is going to take in two arguments. First is going to be what should be removed, and what should be added. So remove and add. Okay, and whatever will be passed in as removed, I'm just going to do exactly as we did up here. So I'm going to select its class list and going to remove the active class from it. Now whatever is going to be passed in as add, and I'm going to add the active class to it. So pretty simple function. It's not exactly what we did up here, but I'm going to replace it with just this function, so both of them, and insert within here our off button and then our on button on btn. There we go. So theoretically they should do exactly the same thing. Okay, and if I do here a on and a off, because now we're removing from our on button the class, so on, off, on, off, on, off, on, off. Okay, it's doing exactly the same thing. Okay, next up, let's see, let's remove our standby. Again, I'm going to create a function for this. I'm going to call it function remove standby. Scroll up a bit. Okay, for this we need to target our container. So switch container, and again we're going to grab onto its class and we're going to remove from it. So this function is called the standby class. Okay, so it's pretty simple. If I would click on, then it should remove the standby class. If I click on off, then it should add it back in, but with a delay. So in order to have this delay, I'm going to create here a if-else statement. So if something, then something should happen, else something else should happen. Now, the first condition will be if the off button has the class list or contains the class list of active, then let me scroll up, then we should start a standby. Okay, so if, as you saw in our finished project, if I have my button on off, it is going to trigger our standby, but after a certain time. Now else, if the container is the switch container class list, or let me rephrase that. If the off button does not contain its active class, then we shall remove the standby class. Okay. Now let's first of all create this standby function. For this, we're going to create. First of all, I'm going to initiate using let a standby variable. Standby. Then I'm going to create a function which I'm going to call start standby. So this function right here. Now I'm going to use a setTimeout for the standby. So standby, we're going to assign it to a setTimeout. This is going to again have a callback function, and this callback function will first of all grab onto the switch container, check its class list, and we're going to add to its class list the class of standby. Now we're also going to grab onto our off button, and from its class list we're going to remove the class of active. And all this is going to have a timeout of 5000 milliseconds, which is actually 5 seconds. Okay. Now we're not done yet, because here in our else statement we also want to clear the interval. Also, whenever you set a timeout, it is going to repeat itself if you click it or if you activate it more than once, and it's going to loop through this infinitely. Okay, so what we need to do now is to clear our timeout. So let's use our clear timeout function, and what we need to clear is the standby. Okay, if we click on our on button, then the standby is going to disappear. Click on our off button and wait for 5 seconds. Then I did something wrong. So let me check the code. Switch containers, remove class list, standby, short. Oh yeah, I forgot to add this in our click event for for the off button. Okay, so we have here our addRemove, but I need to put this in a if-else statement. So if the on button class list contains the active class, then we're going to have our addRemove function and also remove our standby. But else we're going to just return. Okay, now this should work. So on, off, wait 5 seconds, and it works. Okay, but of course you can change this to 3 seconds if you feel fancy. On, off, wait 3 seconds, and it's in standby. Okay, also you cannot activate, let me just wait for it. You cannot activate, or you cannot turn it off without having it turned on first of all. This is why this is inhibiting it. If our on button contains the class of active, then this will be executed. If not, so momentarily it does not contain the class of active, then it's not going to do anything on click event on our off button. Okay, so pretty short and simple project. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, thumbs down. If you're not subscribed, then please consider subscribing. Click the notification bell in order to get notified whenever I post new videos. If you have any kind of questions or suggestions, please leave them in the comment section below. Also, do reminder, I have another YouTube channel called Weekly Code Quickies. It is a complete podcast channel. It's all about technologies and web development. Also check that one out. And hey, catch you next time. Bye bye.